Maggie, a story by Dalrymple. You're so good, said Sandra from the cafe to Alburna. I mean, bringing her here so regularly, especially today in from the rain. You should have leave her for drown, piped up regular Flora Bryant. I remember that one. Should have did long time, she barked as she made her exit from the cafe to rejoin the filthy weather. It's all right, said Alburna Jacobs, ignoring Flora. I go way back with Maggie. Don't we, Mags? Alburna shouted up at Maggie to get her attention. Maggie, a small, grey-haired old woman, only a few years older than Alburna herself, slightly dirty and not completely aware of the day or where she was, seemed to frown before entering into a softer expression and then breaking into a smile. We're not letting you in, we don't like you, and we don't like dogs neither, exclaimed Maggie, with no explanation and as randomly as ever. That's fine, Maggie, you don't have to. I don't like dogs myself. Alburna said this, tapping Maggie's shoulders with comfort as she rose from the table and slipped behind her. Let me just wash my hands. You want to wash up as well, Mags? What for? You'll never get them clean. That shit's not coming off. She pointed to the colour of Alburna's hands. Maggie frowned once again, and then smiling as she waited for Alburna to disappear. Leaning across the table, she grabbed Sandra's tabard. My Larry don't want 'em, see? So I don't want 'em. Loads of 'em. Keep coming, they do. My Larry says we needs to keep it as it is. The house. Keep it clean, see? We put up a sign. And they stopped coming then. Didn't know they could bloody read. Yeah, the sign stopped them. Did the trick. Maggie stopped talking and stared into space and was quite still until she sensed Sandra was looking at her. Here, why'd you let her in? You're mad, you are. Maggie laughed in a way that made her face light up, and Sandra saw her chance. Yes, I did let her in. She's our friend, remember? You like Alburna, don't you, Maggie? She does puzzles with you, takes you to the park, and buys you cakes whenever she brings you to see me. Maggie's face was still aglow as her mood began to switch. Yeah, Bernie's my friend. She's my friend. And you, Sandy, you're my friends, she smiled. As Alburna returned to the table, she put in their usual order and sat with a now beaming Maggie. You want cake, Max? Sandra is bringing it. Alburna had heard Maggie from the ladies' room and knew that the subject of cake would keep her calm. Oh, yes, please, Bernie. Fruit cake for me and Larry. And tea. Alburna took Maggie's hand and patted it with comfort and reassurance. Yes, Max. Always tea. As Alburna entered the hallway of her home soaking wet, she could hear family. Jex! Jex, come by! She called to her husband, who was already descending the stairs. That old watermouth Flora Bryant stopped in here to see if you were home as yet. She said she saw you on the high street. What's she after? He assisted Alburna with her coat. I know it's coming down out there when your children and grandchildren decide to stop in here, he snorted. Alburna took in her husband standing there in his everyday cardigan and slippers. Oh, my children, is it? So is me alone make them? Mr. Jacobs grinned. When they're here and they're hungry, they're yours. They both laughed, entering the family room. So, Bernie, where you been? Alburna said nothing. Yeah, Mum, you dirty stop out, one daughter chimed in, as she kissed her mother along with the grandchildren. Answer came there none from Alburna, now sitting rubbing one of her feet and avoiding her family's gaze. Mr. Jacobs knew his wife's whereabouts that afternoon from her silence, let alone any information he gleaned from Flora Bryant's fleeting visit. You been with that old tramp woman again? Let she been a man? What woman, Mum? Another daughter asked with nosy concern. Margaret Baines, Alburna announced to her family. She hasn't been right since 81. She lost her husband a year before. The riots caused damage to her properties. Money was hard to come by. I hear her son went to fight in the Falklands. I don't know if he came back, but she seems to be all alone now. She just hasn't been right since then, Alburna repeated as her mind was cast back. She sits on the steps of Windrush Square facing the library most days, but she lives in a home near King's Hospital. That's how I saw her again. She paused as one of her daughters spoke. Oh, you don't mean Mad Maggie? Yes, I do, and don't call her that. Alburna looked at her daughters the way she did when they were little girls. Properties, Mum. So it's true, she used to be a landlady. We used to make fun of her back in the day. She used to call us names, chase us. It was so funny. I was scared of her, really. Mr. Jacobs was anxious to make his next statement. Scared? She was nothing to be scared of. She was crazy long before she was mad. He continued, addressing his daughters. Lawrence Baines owned a few properties at the Camberwell end of Cole Harbour Lane. Since the late 50s he had them. But he refused to rent to us. No blacks. She cursed us out constantly. Waited till you passed the house so she could do so. She hated us. And now your mother is friends with her. He sighed. Oh, Lord, give me strength. Alburna turned to her family. I worked at St. James Hospital in Balham until it closed in 1988. And then I worked at a private psychiatric hospital uptown. Y'all remember? Imagine my shock when there it was in black and white. A file on the woman who spat at me, called you cheering monkey, called the police on my husband more than once, accusing your father and his friends of sexual advances. Mr. Jacobs barely let his wife finish. She wouldn't be so lucky, old trout, even when she was young, he cried out, before allowing his wife to continue. I learned that Lawrence was mean as well as greedy. He beat her, treated her less than a dog. She passed it on to those she felt were lower than she was, us. Her daughters clung to their mother's every word. Oh, Mum, Alburna continued. She has dementia now. She doesn't recognize the young woman I was then, struggling to make it in England, raise you girls, keep my head up. If my Jesus can talk to thieves and cockabee man, I can talk to Maggie. She doesn't know what she's saying. I doubt she ever did. Alburna stopped and gripped her husband's hand as she began laughing. Jax, boy, you remember when we came to England? We didn't have a penny. We had nothing. But we had each other. We had kindness. She had properties and money. She seemed to have it all. That Lawrence Baines was a bully. It doesn't hurt to show kindness. It just hurts to show hurt and receive it in return. She reassuringly patted her husband's hand as she did Maggie's in the cafe. So what? I choose to forgive her. Sue me. Her hate for who she thought I was took nothing from me. I tell you this, she was who she was back then, but the life she led, the man she married, all stopped her from becoming who she was meant to be. And now she doesn't even remember who she was. What she and those like her put us through back then made me strong enough to be the woman I am today. Mr. Jacobs, filled with love and pride for his wife, drew close to her. And who are you today, pray tell? He asked. Alburna cupped his face with both hands. The woman I am today is happy to be asking her husband to please put on the kettle and make me a cup of tea. Continuing to smile, she looked over at her daughters and the grandchildren who were now busy with card games at the table. Y'all remember, forgiveness is peace. And after the day I've had, I deserve some. Alburna then reclined on the couch, put her feet up, and closed her eyes. Jax, no sugar. Maggie and I had cake. Maggie, a story, both written and read by Dalrymple. You have been listening to a spoken word production for SoFF Creations.